I love you.
No, my dear, let me make it clear. I love you more than the stars in the sky, more than the leaves on the trees, more than the seconds passing by. I love you more.
That music you just heard was written by John Beyer. But I have to give you upfront warning, this isn't a story about a musician. This is a story about a kid that grew up with two alcoholic parents, thought he was finding his way in life. Alcohol almost took over his life.
I just drank differently than my other friends. I don't know if it was environmental or genetic. It doesn't matter. I drank differently.
Lots of tragedy in his young 20s, including both parents, dear friend. And one day,
I woke up, or I came to. The clock said 6 o'clock. I looked outside the window. The sky was a medium blue, and I did not know if it was AM or PM. Can you imagine that?
Through some kind of intervention, how a paragraph showed up in a book, timed to something he was considering deeply, led back to this extraordinary life.
Everything I realized is just built incrementally. Live a little bit better, one day at a time, break it down into little pieces. It was one truck at a time.
Very successful entrepreneur, family man whose only focus is about providing, having an autistic son and a daughter, trying to manage the needs of both.
That signifies for me balance in life.
Dealing with his own health issues. And you'll hear through the entire interview is just this wonderful smile and this really special human being.
I've always been wanting to live a little better.
John's written a book called Live a Little Better. I'll put the link in the podcast notes because it's just a fantastic book.
I've always wanted more for other people.
I love you more. I love you more.
Hi, it's Tony Chapman. Thank you for listening to Chatter That Matters, presented by RBC. If you can, please subscribe to the podcast. And ratings and reviews, well, they're always welcome and they're always appreciated.
John Beyer, welcome to Chatter That Matters.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony.
Your memoir paints a vivid picture of a tough childhood, parents struggling with alcoholism, and then with it, because my dad was an alcoholic, the wake that comes with it, including a sense of neglect. So take us back to that time if you can, just so that we can set up this journey that it's about to unfold.
Both my parents were alcoholics. Life comes at us all, and life was coming at them, and they had trouble coping, and they went further into the bottle, and it was a mess. I mean, the unmanageability, the police, the fights, the neglect, going from having a few bucks and living a nice lifestyle to being evicted, the eviction notices on the door every day was profound. My sisters and I have two older sisters. We saw some really horrible stuff.
And what I was interested about, what in some ways paralleled my life, is this sense of, I'm going to have to find my own way. I'm going to have to find in my own way to generate a cash flow and a living. And that began at quite at an early age. I guess you're from helping with groceries and delivering pizzas and stuff. And I wish people could see your smile. Where did you find that versus running away?
It was out of necessity. I mean, I just wanted to make some money. I wanted to make a couple of bucks so I could get a slice of pizza. I was 11 years old about, and I went across the street to the neighborhood grocery store, Walbaum's grocery store. I just started helping women with their packages, taking them from the cart and putting it in the trunk. And I took the carts back. These women would give me a quarter or 50 cents on an occasion. And in that day, this guy comes out. What are you doing? It turns out he's the manager, and he scared me. And I thought I was in trouble. And he wound up, at the end of the day, giving me $2. So, I was too young to be on the books, I didn't have working papers or anything like that. I was a child. But I went and I got myself a slice of pizza that day. That was incredibly empowering, knowing that I could actually make my own money. Within the next 2 years, I had 3 jobs, and I was making $100 a week back in 1973 or 4.
Did your parents ever steal any of your money?
No, but I felt obligated to buy things for them. I had holes in my sneakers. My friends and I used to flip baseball cards, and they would throw away the doubles, and I would pick up the doubles and put them in my sneakers so I didn't have a hole, jabbing something in my foot. It was embarrassing.
You also talk about that adolescence period of rebellion, cutting classes. You're starting to chase the bottle. Tell me about that dichotomy. I mean, at age 11, he's contained. How did that side of ambition also turn into the collision with alcohol?
My parents were alcoholics, and I knew, and I watched it ruin their lives, and it wasn't going to happen to me. And I was wrong. From the moment I took my first sip of beer in the hallways and in the staircases of Left Rock City in Queens, New York, I just drank differently than my other friends. I don't know if it was environmental or genetic. It doesn't matter. I drank differently, and I wanted more. And it numbed me, whatever pain. It transformed me from feeling less than. I had reasons to feel less than. Child Protective Services would come to my house because somebody called them on us. I wasn't abused, but I was neglected.
So you got these two opposing forces in your brain, and it turns out that the light at the end of the tunnel kept shining for you, because from what I understand, you straightened out, you returned back to school and stuff. So just set the tone of how much alcohol had taken over your life and what you had to do to regain it.
I did experience a lot of death. My father died when I was 21, and my mother died when I was 24. And I had a very, very good friend commit suicide. He put a shotgun in his mouth and blew the top of his head off. And they found pieces of a skull across the street in the schoolyard. I just drank to numb the pain. And on March 31st, 1986, I woke up, or I came to. The clock said 6 o'clock. I looked outside the window. The sky was a medium blue, and I did not know if it was AM or PM. Can you imagine that? That's profound, And I wound up going to an AA meeting that night. On the very day I'm considering going to my first meeting, I grab a book in the library inadvertently and open it to the one page on Alcoholics Anonymous where it said it's the most successful program known for the treatment of the disease of alcoholism. And I went to a meeting that night. I came home, and my girlfriend at the time, Amy, was making dinner. And before the door closed behind me, I said, our whole lives are going to change.
It's so interesting that one moment changes your life, or that first drink, you knew you had more. Have you ever thought of yourself as this personality that when you open the door, you're completely inside it, as opposed to some people kind of step in and step out and look around and sort of judge where they are, that you seem to have an ability to go all in?
No, I never realized that. Even look at that. Thanks for that little, you can still learn something even at my age. I realized recently something about myself, that I'm still very competitive.
You talk in your book about Walter and Kevin, instrumental, your sponsors. Did you meet him at the first meeting? What caused that first meeting for you to realize that there was a different path that you'd been following for the last 10 years?
I was in pain, and I was very sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. I needed to change, and I knew I was in bad shape. I knew I needed help. I was bankrupt emotionally, mentally. And I heard this woman share, her name is Rose, and we're still in touch today through social media. She shared, and she refused to say she was an alcoholic. And then she would say, well, I know I'm an alcoholic, but I don't want to say I'm an alcoholic yet. And I identified with that, yet I still managed to put my hand up at my very first meeting and said, my name is John and I'm an alcoholic. Because I knew I didn't get there by mistake. When you inadvertently open up a 400-page book to the one paragraph that talks about Alcoholics Anonymous on the one day that you're considering going into your first meeting ever, you didn't get there by accident. Divine intervention, I don't know what you want to call it, but I'm not overly religious. I do believe in something greater than myself. But at the same time, it was not an accident. That nobody walks into an AA meeting by mistake.
And do you think when you met Walter and Kevin, that was part of the intervention that you were going to have? Because from what I understand, the people that have gone through the program, the chemistry between the recovering alcoholic and sponsor is everything.
Yeah, you have to have somebody you trust, somebody who cares, somebody who has no agenda, somebody who just wants to see you do better. Still in touch with Kevin today. I speak to him all the time. I love him. Him and his wife are terrific. We socialize together. My wife and I, is Amy, who I wound up marrying, that girl that was cooking dinner that night. You do need their chemistry and that bond and the honesty. And you had to let me get the program in my own way, the little doses that I needed. Because if you tried to shove it down my throat, that wasn't going to work.
Have you and Amy ever talked about that time that you walked through the door and say our life's changing? If you hadn't done it, how your life would have unfolded differently?
I wouldn't have had my children.
That's such an amazing story. And was she drinking at the time?
Very, very little.
So talk to me about, in the book, you talk about completing the fifth step in AA, where you have to confess past wrongs. Was something really important to you? And for a person that kind of put up their hand and said, I am an alcoholic, this is a much bigger statement. This is the pain I've caused people.
You confess all the things that you did and that haunt you and rent space in your brain and make you toss and turn at night. If you don't do that, they're going to continue to haunt you and rent space in your brain. And you may very well drink over it and start to hide again from life and self-destruct. I did do that with Kevin. I've done it again and again, and because none of us are pious or perfect in the program, I'm very grateful for that.
And the people that you had to have those conversations with, which was the hardest person that you had to talk to about what you were and the sort of the wake you caused from your drinking and how it impacted others?
Mostly Amy. We were together for a long time. I met her on my 17th birthday, and I didn't get sober till I was 26. I remember sharing at one of my early anniversaries. I was sober about 3 years, and you get up there and you start talking, and you say, I'm very grateful, and there's 75 or 100 people in the room. I said, my wife is here now because I'd gotten married then. I said, and she stuck through me through all those good times, which really goes to show how sick she is. And I said this off the cuff, completely ad-lib, not planned at all. And the room erupted with laughter.
Little girl with auburn hair gave you the world, but you just don't care. Eye rolls and looks of disgust. I'm your dad, what happened to us? Such a big girl.
That's more music from John Beyer. And when we return, we're going to talk about what got him to write a play and some great lessons in life along the way.
Hi, this is Tony Chapman, host of the radio show and podcast Chatter That Matters. Did you know that only 1 in 5 youth with a mental health illness can get access to the care they need? Well, a big shout out to the RBC Foundation and RBC Future Launch for supporting over 150 youth mental health organizations. And in doing so, they help youth and their families get the care they need and deserve.
That I didn't even realize people didn't drink. So my father was a bartender. My mother drank in the bars every day. I thought everybody drank all the time. I was in pain, and I was very sick and tired of feeling sick and tired.
It takes strength to admit we are powerless. We are powerless. It takes strength to admit we are powerless. We are powerless. What can I see? It has nothing to do with anyone but me.
And that's more music from John Beyer, the author of Live a Little Better.
Blaming everyone, blaming everything.
Just a fantastic human being.
Ain't blaming me, ain't blaming me. What does it mean? This feeling.
Let's move on, because now you're putting the pieces together. You mentioned your children. We'll talk about that. But Men on the Move. How did you get into the moving business? And how did one van become many?
In the book, I talk about my relationship with a guy named John Tarko, and how I met him in the bar. And we had this whole argument in the $100 bet over the word perks and who would know that meaning in the bar. And I wound up winning that bet, but I had not shown up for work. I had still been drinking, and he would rib me and give me a hard time about that. And I wound up working for him for about 6 months, and he said, you should start your own moving business. Slowly by little, I was getting a truck a year. Every year I was sober. I mean, and all I wanted to do was work. And I figured it out. Okay, if I get another truck, it's going to yield me maybe another $20,000 of profit for the year. Of course, I didn't understand at the time the rate of diminishing return. For some reason, the fifth truck doesn't make you $20,000 a year. It makes you about $11,000 a year. But it was my buddy John who pushed me and got me started in the moving business.
What did you learn about yourself and life in sort of this business? Because, I mean, the thing about the moving business is it's not like you get a lot of repeat customers. Maybe 5 years from now if they move again, but it's a business where you're constantly having to bring in new customers in the door.
Maybe disagree with you a little bit with that, Tony. We got a tremendous amount of repeat and referred business. We had a 70-some-odd% repeat and referral rate because we were morally centered. We just, were well-intended, got up in the morning and wanted to make an honest buck. And went out there and did our job. I was sober now, so the truck had, the 100+ moving blankets and all the dollies and wardrobe cartons that it was supposed to have when, prior it really didn't.
In your book, you constantly come back to talking about the role Amy played in not only encouraging your entrepreneurial, but just believing in you.
She did. I mean, my wife really did believe in me. She was scared. She definitely communicated some like, what the hell are you doing? moments that, I remember I ordered a brand new forklift for the warehouse and it was $25,000. And we're talking 30 some odd years ago. She said, what's that? Because I was afraid to tell her that I had ordered it. And Amy is the controller of the company. I also call Amy my controller with and without the P. The point is that she keeps me grounded.
When do you think she had the faith that the shoe wouldn't drop, that you were a recovering alcoholic that was going to stay that way?
In a large way, she actually takes it for granted, but I would say that to her too. And I would say that she's still afraid of, money and things like that, which is, at this point in life is a little ludicrous. But that's just her nature. But I think that's driven me. I think I've wanted to always make her feel secure. And I write about my relationship with money in the book. I would talk about that profound moment at the grocery store. I talk about my children, particularly my son, and the need to make money. And then I talk about Amy wanting her to be, always satisfied.
You talked about your family, your son, Gregory, autism was a blow because, again, I guess as somebody that's a provider, it's tough because when you have a child like that, that child's going to be having different needs for their entire life, a life that will most likely outlive yours. How did Gregory coming along, how did that change your whole dynamics as an individual and as a parent?
It was a real gut punch, boy, let me tell you. I kind of got it right away. My wife didn't. We were leaving the psychologist's office where she said, I see autism here. And I knew we were in trouble. I knew when he passed his hearing test, I was upset that he didn't have a hearing issue because I knew then it was cognitive. But I remember walking to the parking lot saying to myself, Amy doesn't quite get this yet, and this is going to cost a lot of money. And my son became my new motive for wanting to be more successful in business.
Was the motivation to get you into the storage business and the real estate side of the business, or was that just...
That just happened. I was always autodidactic. I didn't graduate from college. I dropped out because of my drinking. I was going to skip the 8th grade, and then I failed math and I couldn't, and that's when my whole attitude changed. Bright on one hand and an underachiever on the other, but now I wasn't underachieving. I felt like now that I was being sober, I could achieve anything I wanted. But my family was my focus, and I knew I was going to have to really provide for him and private tutors, and we would fly across the country to see specialists and so on and so forth.
It's also interesting within the book, you talk about the dynamic with your daughter, Lauren, who felt overshadowed. Mom and dad aren't giving me the attention I deserve. How did you work out those dynamics? Because very often that creates a marital issue as well as much as it does parenting.
It was really difficult, and we thought we were doing a good job. Amy and I had discussed it openly. We're going to give Lauren her attention. I had the Universal Man, Da Vinci's Renaissance Man poster in my office, and that signifies for me balance in life. Take care of not just my son, but my whole family. Take care of my wife. Make sure that she and I have spend time on our relationship. My own dreams and wishes as well. And Lauren was absolutely paramount in the attention that we thought we were giving her, but yet she felt like she wasn't getting the attention. And, we didn't know this, and it did have an effect on her. It did. She's the one who inspired me to write the book.
How did that come about?
I read another book, The Tender Bar, about a kid growing up in a bar. I'm just talking about it to my daughter with enthusiasm. My daughter says, you should write your story. You should write your story. You're going to inspire people and you're going to help people. I've always wanted to help people, and that's part of the program. And I've always been giving back to the program. But now, at this point in my life, I'm doing it even more and more. And it's the best thing in the world.
Another chapter in your book, which came out of nowhere to me, was the John Beyer music. So this is the moving van guy and the storage guy and the provider. Next thing you know, it inside you is this incredible songwriter. So how did that all come about?
I've always loved music. I was in the chorus in school all the time, and I sang all the time. I sang at my sister's wedding when I was 21 years old. When I was attending bar, I used to get the girls dancing up on top of the bar, doing high kicks to New York, or whatever it was. And then every chapter begins with some lyrics, as you know. My name is John. I was a bartender. John at the bar is a friend of mine who gets me my drinks for free. But he's quick with a joke or to light up your smoke, but there's someplace that he'd rather be. Bill, I believe this is killing me. As the smile ran away from his face, for I'm sure I could be a movie star if I could just get out of this place. Boy, did I identify with those lyrics. I just met Billy Joel last November, and we had extensive conversation about this. I told him all about it.
Where did the music take you as an individual? Because you cite me as someone that's always looking after other people, never talking about looking after yourself. Was this the first time you really had a chance to look after yourself and just do something that you wanted to do versus do something that you would feel helped others?
Yes, but no, because what started is that I had an idea for a play. So here you have this moving and storage guy. That's all I've been doing for the last 35, 40 years, who likes to sing on an occasion. I have this idea pop into my head to write a story about addiction, to write a play about addiction. I want to write a musical. So I start asking around, do you know anybody who writes music? Because I don't write music. As a working title of We, W-E, because the first step of every 12-step program is we admitted we were powerless. And what people don't know is that the 12 steps of AA are the same 12 steps, and all the anonymous programs come from Alcoholics Anonymous. So you have Gamblers Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Sexaholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Marijuana's Anonymous, all those anonymous programs. So I wound up writing this story where all these addicts interact with each other at the same time. With my collaborator, who I write the music with, I have over 20 songs written and the play well outlined. I just need somebody to help me put the dialogue together, and then I'm going to put it off Broadway and hopefully take it to another level.
And how much of your life is just what you just said, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that? In other words, you dream it with such clarity that you actually see it unfold, and therefore you find yourself marching on that path.
I use the metaphor of a moving job, and I start out with that in the preface of the book, about taking something from point A to point B. That metaphorically speaking, that taught me how to start something and complete it. You fill the moving truck up, and then you have to, an hour later or 20 minutes later sometimes, you have to start unpacking it because they only moved 20 minutes away. And, I did hundreds and hundreds of moving jobs like that, where I was working till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night in January, where your hands are freezing and you can't wait for the job to be over. And it never seems to be ending, but you have to finish it. And every real estate transaction that I've ever done, it's the same thing. They are examples of perseverance to see something through, because there's so much bureaucracy and so many obstacles in the way of achieving what their vision is.
I mean, you should do the play on you. because you also have dealt with some significant health challenges, some real near fatal moments. I mean, and yet I look at you, you look incredibly healthy and happy, and you're talking about the next 3 or 4 moves on the chessboard. So
8 years ago, I had colon cancer. 3.5 years later, 3.5 years ago, it had spread to my liver. I had 2/3 of my liver taken out, and I had a chemo pump that delivered chemo directly into my liver. I think that's why I'm still alive. However, it's damaged my liver. In the last 6-7 months, I've been bleeding, and I have had some procedures done, but I'm alive and I'm doing it. And every day I just get up and do things. Fortunately, pick and choose what I'm finding to be most important. So my son-in-law, very funny, says he has the sequel because I just had this procedure done about 6 weeks ago on my liver. And he said, I hope it's not too soon. He said, but just the sequel to your book should be called Liver a Little Better.
glad you're keeping your sense of humor.
But I don't have cancer and I'm not going to die. My death is not imminent. I am a little tired, but I still have all these goals and dreams and I still want to make a difference. And that's what's behind We. You know, if I can, Tony, for a minute, comment on the title of the book. It comes from the billboard that stood on the Long Island Expressway in Queens, New York for decades. It was advertising the development that I grew up in called Left Rack City. And my daughter knew all about that. And when she was in college, we're stuck in traffic, as you always are on the Long Island Expressway. And she took a picture out from the car when it was moving. And she took a picture of the billboard that I loved. She just caught the picture. I love the picture. And 2 weeks later, the billboard came down. And I realized I've always been wanting to live a little better. And then I realized my son, in teaching autism, and you teach these kids in what they call discrete trials, and you break it into little pieces. Like when we were teaching him the word apple, he wouldn't utter a sound. So we had to break it down and teach him ah. And he learned and then eventually became apple. And we did pirouettes. And then you go into AA and you live life one day at a time. And everything I realized is just built incrementally. You know, live a little bit better, one day at a time, break it down into little pieces. It was one truck at a time that I adopted, one time in my business career.
How do you think people will remember you one day?
That I've always wanted more for other people. My wife and I have done a lot in the autism community. And as much as whatever we were working on may have benefited our son, it was always for the community itself. We were building a life skills program. She built a life skills program in the school district. She became one on the school board in North Shore Schools on Long Island. And the life skills program was teaching kids how to do banking and grocery shopping and mailing a letter. That was not just going to be for Gregory. It was going to be for every kid that came in after him.
How's Gregory doing, by the way?
I'm so glad you asked me that question. Today is a great day. So in the book, you'll come to learn, I'm getting teary-eyed. Gregory works for my son-in-law at an organization called Spectrum Designs. Patrick, my son-in-law, years ago, came over on the Camp America program and by chance became Gregory's camp counselor. He got sponsored by a woman named Stella Spinakos and another woman, Nicole. They created this organization called Spectrum Designs and the Nicholas Center. And that employs adults with autism. So my son works now for Spectrum Designs. They print T-shirts, they print hats, embroideries, silk screening. They do a myriad of things there. It's a great, great place. It's in Port Washington, spectrumsdesigns.org. And today, my son passed his T-shirt silk screening certification through the Department of Labor. And they had a little ceremony and they had all these, they were all getting, he's 33 years old. He's going to be 34 years old. And we're taking him out to the nice steakhouse here in the neighborhood tonight. So I'm really proud of him because it's not a joke. It's an accredited certification from the Department of Labor. It's great.
As you got to know him and others with autism, did you discover a side to him that you were envious about?
Oh, he's a hardworking SOB. He was hardworking when he was, doing these discrete trials across the table for many years, just trying to learn basic language skills. And he's sweet and he's endearing. He has an innocence about him. There's no jadedness in any of these kids, really.
John, I always end my podcast with my 3 takeaways. And the first one is take it to completion. I know you cited the moving business as the one that gave you that I have to get the job done. But I just see the 11-year-old kid and I smile who has just wanted 2 slices of pizza and a Coca-Cola for $1.10, and 11 years old wanders off and creates your own job in a grocery lot. Weren't invited, weren't asked, thought you were getting in trouble. In the end, the guy just loved the fact that you were doing it. The second is just this, you go through a door. And a lot of us kind of open and close the door, look around, check, try to look for validation. And it was a very moving part of your book. And I love when you came home and you opened the door and said to Amy, who's now your wife, that our life is going to change from this point on. Having that conviction and that confidence and ability. And then I guess the last thing is just this concept of being a provider, that you measure your entire life as your ability to provide for others. I guess it comes back to as a childhood where your parents didn't provide for you, that being your calling. But I think there's a lot of people in the world that have benefited from John Beyer and his ability to live life, to live a little better. I'm looking forward to your sequel, Live Her a Little Better.
Thank you very much.
Once again, a special thanks to RBC for supporting Chatter That Matters. It's Tony Chapman. Thanks for listening, and let's chat soon.